Okay, so there's something that before I continue on with some of the other stuff that's happened at the park, I just want to go back really quick because there's something that I forgot to mention about that neighborhood kid that ran his hand along my son's chin and there was a drop of blood on my son's chin later. That same kid was also using this nonsense word that I've only heard maybe 2 or 3 times before in my life. It's a very specific word that has a very specific syllables in a very specific tone, in a very specific rhythm. It's hard to explain, and if you're not a targeted individual, you wouldn't understand maybe, but it's a word that I can't specifically remember who it was, but somebody was using that word around me when I lived in Los Angeles years ago, like maybe 15 years ago or something. And I never heard that word again until, as far as I can remember, I didn't hear that word again until I was living in New York, like, I don't know, 4 years ago or whatever it was, when I was living in New York City and I was working for that company. You guys may remember some of my other TI videos. I talk about how that my boss at that company was harassing me, and he also was using that same nonsense word. So there's something, I don't know, it was just weird. Anyway, it's a nonsense word that I've only heard people use like maybe twice before in my life. And this kid, you know, like I said, once in Los Angeles, once in New York City, and this neighborhood kid was using that same word. So and he's the one that like ran his hand along my son's chin, and then later there was a drop of blood there. So I mean, I'm just saying there's more going on here. There's so many things that I literally don't have time to tell you guys everything that's going on. Okay, so getting back to some of the stuff that's been going on at the park. There was this other time where, I don't know if you guys remember, the lady, I talked about this in a TI video like last year, I think, where this lady yelled at me from across the park and she said, "Oh, I'm so scared," and she was quivering her hands and her knees, and I just didn't know what she was talking. My first thought was she can't be talking to me. I don't know her. I mean, I'm not even doing anything. I'm not talking. I'm just standing here, with my son. But I was looking all around. I looked behind me and everywhere, and there was no one else in her line of sight. It was just me. And so, I mean, it was definitely a gang stalking incident. I don't know what she was talking about. But then this year, there was this lady who, again, was looking in my direction. I don't know her. I've never seen her before in my life. And she said, "Are you scared? I can tell by the look on your face." And again, there wasn't anybody in her line of sight except me, and also the only other person was a baby. And I thought it was an odd thing. That's kind of an odd thing for a person to say to a baby, but I thought, well, maybe, and so I kind of just put it out of my mind, and I just thought, I don't really know if that was an incident or not, and I don't want to think about it. I just kind of want to pretend like maybe it wasn't. But there was another thing about this lady that was odd, and it was the way that she was standing and the way that she was walking. I don't know if I can explain it, but it seemed like it was off center or something. It didn't look right to me. I've never seen anybody walk like that in the park ever before. So the way she was walking was not, like I said, I've never seen anybody walk like that in the park before. And also it was something about the angle, the way she was standing. it seemed like the top part of her body was off center from the bottom part of her body or something. And it was slightly, I can't explain it. There's just something not right about that. And also that day, I noticed that there were a lot of chemtrails in the sky, and there was a chemtrail X in front of where I was sitting, and there was also a chemtrail X behind where I was sitting. And I just remember thinking, wow, I wonder, there's a lot of, and it wasn't just those two X's. They were just all over the sky that day. And I remember thinking, wow, it's a heavy chemtrail day. And I kind of thought about it, and I'm thinking to myself, I wonder why some days are more heavy chemtrail days than other days, Well, when my son and I were leaving the park that day, my son pointed at something, and I turned back around to look at the park, and I saw up in the sky this cloud that was shaped like a UFO. And I mean, it just looked like a UFO, except it was a cloud. And it was right over the park. And I remember thinking, and then it just kind of hit me that maybe there was a UFO over the park that day. And maybe the reason they're spraying the chemtrails is in order to illuminate the UFOs or something. I mean, because it looked like, it really literally looked like the chemtrail clouds collecting around a UFO. That's really what it looked like. Because like I said, it was just shaped exactly like a UFO. And it wasn't a normal cloud, like it wasn't a puffy cloud. It was a chemtrail cloud shaped like a UFO. But it kind of looked solid. I mean, it kind of looked like maybe there really was a UFO there. So I don't know, just really bizarre. And then, okay, so there's this other park incident that I want to talk about. And this one, so this another day, I'm going to the park with my son, and for some reason it was just really, really quiet that day. And anytime I've ever gone to the park, there's always other people there. There's usually, a good amount of other people there, I guess. In this, anyway, when it, if it's a nice day or whatever, it's good amount of people there. But for some reason this day, it was a nice day. At least I think it was, I'm pretty sure it was a nice day. But it was just, there was nobody there. And it was just really, it seemed unusually quiet. And also, there was something about when I was walking into the park, someone passed me and they were talking about the temperature, and they used the term Celsius, which we don't really use in the United States. Usually if somebody's talking about the temperature, they just kind of say, oh, it's such and such degrees. But instead, this person, the way they said it was, it's such and such degrees Celsius. And I remember thinking that seemed sort of odd to me, but I just blew it off. But then, like I said, it was unusually quiet in the park that day, and also there was nobody else there except for these two boys who looked like they were maybe, I don't know, somewhere between 8 and 12. Like one of them looked like he was maybe 8 or 9, and the other one looked like he was maybe around, I don't know, 10, 11 or 12 or something. And they were the only ones in the park that day. There was just nobody else there, and it was quiet, and it was bizarre. Well, I kind of, I was like, okay, it's kind of a quiet day, whatever. But then this one kid, the first thing I noticed about this kid was that he looked like, there's this person that I dated about 8 or 9 years ago, and the way, and I know what this old boyfriend of mine looked like when he was younger, like around 8 or 9, and this kid at the park looked almost identical to the way this old boyfriend of mine looked when he was that age. And I noticed that, and but I kind of just, again, I just kind of blew it off. I kind of thought, okay, it's just a coincidence. Kind of, kind of interesting, but a coincidence, I'm sure. But then this same kid started saying things that were just odd. So I'm just going to tell you guys this. I hadn't shaved my legs that day, so I was wearing pants. I covered up my legs. And I know that this kid didn't see my legs because my legs were covered up. And he wasn't really that close to me, but I heard him say, he either said, you need to shave, or she needs to shave. I'm not sure which one. But he wasn't talking. I'm pretty sure he wasn't talking to his friend, because his friend was off in another area of the park, some distance away. And he didn't yell it. He kind of just said it. The kid was closer to me than he was to his friend. But he wasn't looking at me. And it was very odd. And I kind of thought, wow, did I really just hear that? And then, because I had been thinking about it before I went to the park that day, and I thought, wow, it's strange that he just said something that I was thinking about. And I kind of just thought, okay, I don't know what's up with that. But then he said, she sits good. And again, there was no other female there except me. And that day I was sitting in a very upright position because my back was hurting really bad that day. And so I just kind of thought it was odd, but kind of blew it off. But then when the kid was leaving, he said goodbye to my son, and he said my son's name. And I know that I didn't use my son's name at the park that day, but also he didn't just use my son's name. He actually used my son's nickname that I know I've never, ever used that nickname in public ever before. So that was very odd. And so I was thinking about it later, and I'm thinking, okay, so now the whole thing is just bizarre, because I know there's something going on with that, because the kid used my son's nickname when he said goodbye to him, and I've never used that name in public. So there's something going on there. And the fact that he looked almost identical to this boyfriend that I had 8 or 9 years ago. And then it hit me, the kid looked like he was 8 or 9 years old. And so, so then, of course, I started thinking about the time when the UFO was above the park, and then I'm thinking about all these stories that people have about, when they're being abducted by aliens and finding these children that they didn't know that they had, like the aliens. I'm thinking of all these stories I've heard people talk about, and I'm just going, what is this? This is so weird. And then and then I started thinking about the fact that it was extraordinarily quiet and that there was no one else there. And I'm thinking, wait a minute, what was I even in the park? Was I on I don't know. Was I on a holodeck on a spaceship or something? I didn't even realize it. Or you hear about other people going through stuff like this, and I don't know. I just was wondering about it. I can't say that I really believe that. But I couldn't help but wonder. It was a very odd situation. Okay, so I need to start the next video here. The link is below.